Alright guys, as you can tell, another home episode, but today I thought we would keep it nice and cozy because I wanted to, you know how like on the channel we always talk about my acne experiences, you know, from the beginning it really was kind of sharing products that I used, you know, what gets rid of this and that, but today I really wanted to share with you guys how I don't want to say cured my hormonal acne naturally, but it was essentially how I got rid of it, because I think I can finally at this point in time say that I've cleared my skin to a point where I don't get cystic breakouts anymore. I don't need to cover it up. And for those of you who have followed my journey on Beauty Within, I kind of go into a little bit here and there about, like, you know, as a teen I would get breakouts, and then as a young adult in my 20s I would get breakouts, but I never really broke it down because within that whole period there was a lot to it. In my teen years that was a different type of breakout to what happened in my early 20s when I moved to New York, which was deep cystic acne, which was early 20s to about 25. And there were a lot of things kind of happening in each of those phases of my life, and then how I really dug deep and researched a bunch of stuff, learned about my body, controlled my hormones with the foods and the products, learned about ingredients, and finally at a point now where I can say my skin is clear. Like today, I do have eye makeup on and stuff, but apart from that, like, I wanted to keep it as real as possible. I never used to be able to walk out of the house makeup free for maybe like a good 8 years of my life, ever since I was like 15. So I'm gonna just share my experience. I know that this is going to be really different for everyone, but I think it's really helpful for people who are also going through acne and trying to find out, like, what is the root cause of the problem and what could be happening, especially when you hear so many different people say this is how you cure it, this is what can help, and like nothing really seems to work for you. So it's like, what is wrong with me? So I want to kind of share with you my experience to hopefully help you along the way to understand what a balanced approach is for you, because none of us are the same. Yeah, I have my notes and I don't know if I'm going to be able to follow it. Let's see. Intro. Yes. And I shared my new favorite cup with you guys on our new magazine. It's our e-magazine. Basically shares our favorite kind of curated items. One of them was my mug because I love teas and coffees and stuff, and I just feel like everyone needs a cozy kind of home mug, you know what I mean? All the details will be in the description. Please like and subscribe and join our family if you haven't already. And I guess I'll just start with the beginning, which is, okay, yes, let us describe my skin. In short, I have oily and acne prone skin. So it wasn't always acne prone. I knew I had oily skin, but then, you know, from around 14, 15, you know, when you get your period, and then I just realized I started getting really textured, bumpy, clogged pores, little papules. I would get breakouts on my cheeks. My nose would be like kind of clogged with some blackheads and whiteheads. And it was nothing major yet, because the funny thing is, I think my acne at its worst only happened towards my early 20s when I moved to New York. But in my teens, I already had breakouts and pimples. I think that was a result of not knowing enough about, you know, actually cleansing my skin, and it just caused a lot of breakouts that were produced by clogged pores. So that was kind of like my skin. It was always bumpy, textured, and filled with breakouts, and it would be red, especially on my cheeks. And then on top of that, like when I was, I don't know, 16 or something, I got chicken pox, and then the chicken pox came and went, and it left me with a bunch of scars. So then I was left with chicken pox scars as well as pimple scars, like kind of those ice pick ones. So that was around from like 15 to about 18 or 19. So that was a lot for me to like want to hide, and that's when I started kind of like concealing over it, and just finding different ways to kind of like blend my skin in. And that was kind of the time times of the St. Ives scrub, you know, the clean and clear. And then at the time I was getting irregular periods. Like it would come 3 times a year, 4 times a year. No matter how bad it got, I never really thought of going to the dermatologist or doctor and getting the pill as an option. Laziness probably had a lot to do with it, but I was just like, yeah, I'm not about that life. And then on top of that, I also really wasn't willing to go on these like strict diets where you go like all vegetarian or vegan or whatever it is, because at the end of the day, I think I still wanted to live my life. So then there was, oh my God, the sun is starting to go down. I'm so sorry. Okay, I didn't really do anything. I just kind of like lived with it, and I was like, ugh, life. So then it was like a collection of different things that started to like get things into motion on my upward trajectory. I was feeling under the weather one day, and you know, when you get sick, you're out for the week. During that time, you know, you drink your water, you basically don't really eat anything. Nothing that you used to eat on a normal basis, you would really eat when you're sick. And then I, you know, reduced the amount of coffee obviously I had, because I was just like laying in bed, sleeping and all this stuff. You know, when you're like decrepit and frail because you haven't really eaten for the week. But I look in the mirror after that week and I'm like, wow, my skin is actually clear. Even though I look like death, like you're all pale and malnourished or whatever, like my skin would always be clear. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. So what is it? Like, is it the food? Is it that I'm drinking a bunch of water because I'm dehydrated? Is it that I'm sleeping more? Which one is it? So it was at that point that I started thinking, maybe my baseline is not acne prone. My skin and my body is actually able to be clear. So what is it that I'm actually doing wrong in my day-to-day life that's aggravating it? That was when I really started to think about like all my actions and things that I would do in my daily routine that could be causing it, more as a set of things rather than individual things like, oh, my skincare isn't working, that's why I have acne, or oh, I'm not drinking enough water, that's why I have acne. You know, as like a separate pillar. I started kind of thinking maybe it's actually this collective ecosystem that's causing my breakouts. So after the week I was like feeling unwell, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna see how long I can prolong this. So I think I'm gonna go out, buy me some broccoli, some cauliflower, and yeah, just instill a little bit more greens, because I would have no greens, like nada. It would only be if I had a sandwich, like one piece of lettuce in a burger or something. I would never actively go out to get a salad at that point. It wasn't enticing to me. And then I reduced my dairy. Since college, I started drinking soy milk. And this was before like oat milk became the hottest thing, because I realized every time I would drink cow's milk, my stomach would get bloated. I'd get a little bit gassy and uncomfortable. Like it would feel like this thing was stuck at the top of my stomach. And so just because of that, it wasn't that bad, but I was just like, yeah, maybe I'll just have soy. So yeah, I was already kind of off cow's milk for a while at that point, but I would still kind of have it now and again if I didn't want to like pay extra sometimes. And I would love cheese, so I would always get like toasted cheese sandwiches. I would just lay it on every time I had pasta. I made pasta a lot when I was living by myself and eat it for days, because I would just make a pot of it, and Ro knows because at the time we were living together. So I was like, okay, maybe that's something that I'll reel back on. And then I also reduced the amount of coffees that I had. So I went from 3 coffees, and I was like, you know what? I'm actually going slightly broke from buying so many coffees. And on top of that, maybe it has something to do with my period. Who knows? Maybe there's just like too much caffeine coursing through my veins. So I reduced that to 1. And then I was kind of just staying mindful with how much sugar I had. Anytime there was sugar in my coffee, I would start opting out of it. And if I did, it would be like agave, or it would be maple syrup. And I just like found other alternatives to try out during that time. Oh, and then I started having a lot of like tuna and avocado kind of sandwiches and toast. And then I changed that over to whole wheat or like whole grain bread. So then I continued for the next like 2 to 3 weeks. After 1 week, I felt better. Not as sluggish, not as heavy, and it's like hard to describe. And then I was like, you know what? Actually incorporating these additional boring nutrients and stuff into my meals is not bad. I actually feel better. I don't feel as bloated. And then I got my period. So I was like, wow, okay. I don't even remember when the last time I got my period was, so maybe this is just the time that it finally came. Also, a little added thing, whenever I would get my period, it would go for like 9 days. I don't know, I just assumed that because it didn't come that often that it needed to like get rid of so much waste. And I talked to my friends, and when they told me it was over in like 3 to 4 days, I'm like, who are you? Is that normal? Like mine goes for 3 times the amount of yours. Anyway, so then my period came and I'm like, okay, great. And then yeah, I kind of continued on this. One day I was at my friend's place and we were having dinner and I was like, oh, feels weird. So I go to the toilet and my period came. I was like, wait a second. This is so often. How many, like, I was trying to calculate when was the last time that I had it. It was a month ago. And I remember I actually jotted it down because I was like, maybe I want to start tracking it in case this does work or something. And so I opened my phone and I was like, oh my God, it actually came 4 weeks after that last time I got it. And I was like, interesting. I'm trying to describe how monumental this was because at that point, I had never gotten it 1 month after another. And that was the first time since I was 14. So I was like, oh my God, what? And then in terms of my skin, that month did not have cystic breakouts. It was just like all the little, you know, I imagine these planets and they all just came together and like it started all making sense in a way, but I still didn't know like how it happened. So that really then started this deep research for me into each specific thing and how it could potentially be affecting my body. I started looking into dairy and I would always notice like every time I would have a piece of cheese or like excessive amounts, the next day, like clockwork, I would just wake up to at least 2 new pimples. Sometimes it would be huge, sometimes it would be a little bit less. And the closer it was to the time that I should have my period, the worse it would be. You know, people who have symptoms of PCOS, it's basically when you have too much male hormones or the androgen or testosterone. I started looking into how dairy could affect people with hormonal imbalance. For 9 months out of the year, these cows are pumped with not just hormones they naturally produce to feed their calves, but they're pumped with growth hormones in addition to what they normally produce. And then that travels into the milk, and that's why if you already have hormonal imbalances, it can actually spike things like the blood sugar, your insulin, which then actually triggers something in your brain that creates more testosterone, which directly can impact your period from coming. Basically impact your ovulation cycle. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And the same with having too much carbs. Like I had sandwiches, I had pastas, I had rice, and I never like gave two thoughts about it because I was like, I'm just gonna eat what I want to eat, and I don't think I'm that sensitive because I'm not in pain. But it wasn't the pain part, it was actually my body was like trying to show me that it was just like too much for me, that it was inhibiting my periods from coming. That's also when I started looking into like how cruciferous vegetables contain fiber, and fiber is actually what helps to flush out excess hormones from circulating all within your body, and fiber is only present in vegetables. So everything that I had was a complete like hormonal imbalance. So all the acne I was having was basically triggered by not adjusting my body and not adjusting the foods I was feeding myself to be able to like actually cycle on a normal basis. And so I was like so mind blown. And then there's hormones like the PGE 1, 2, 3. We're actually given 2 receptors that are helping with relaxation of your uterus, and only one that's connected with uterus contraction. So your body is actually helping you naturally relax, and so you shouldn't have things like PMS symptoms and things like cramping, because that's actually your body telling you that there's something that's a little bit off, which is why you crave, which is why you have pains and bloating and all that stuff. And I was just like, oh my God, like, why didn't I know all of this? This is what has been happening within my body for the longest time, and it's why I've basically been forcing the breakouts out. So then it was at that point on that my skin literally took a shift. There was this period where I started talking about the Haru Haru and the Dr. Cereal Propolis ampule. That was exactly at the time that I was figuring out everything to do with my insides. It was like a beautiful moment where it all made sense. Before, I would just look to my skincare to be a solution to fix my problems, but it would always come around again. Like, it would never go away for long enough for me to really be like, ah, I figured it out. But at this point, I was like, oh my God, I figured it out. And it was through the smallest of things, but it was a collection of little things. So it was reduce the amount of sugars that were from too much carbs and not having enough vegetables to kind of balance that, to feed my body and for my body to create the hormones to adjust itself so that I would get my cycle to therefore clear my skin. So that's kind of how I started figuring out my kind of acne process. And now, like, I haven't had kind of cysts in a really long time. I do still get like body breakouts when it's coming up to my period, and I know the week before my period I'm not gonna have nearly as much cheese or anything dairy related. I'll kind of just make sure that's more controlled, but I still have it, you know, and I still incorporate a lot of different aspects of dairy. Like, I'll still have ice cream sometimes, but yeah, nothing too much. And the sugar, I never have refined white sugar anymore. If I can control it, like, I'll never put it in there. Date syrup is so good to have with your cough. And some people are gonna say it's still sugar, but it spikes your insulin in a different way where it's kind of extended rather than just like a peak. If you have these hormonally driven acne issues, then you really want to concentrate on the foods you eat because it has the most to do with everything. So it wasn't anything like I even had to go on a strict diet, because once again, I'm just not the person to want to do that. That's why, you know, when I was thinking about this video, like, I'm not gonna say that one thing fixed it. It was all these like little micro changes that I had to make, which I'm actually really happy that it was that way, because I don't think anything to the extreme will be the solution for you long term, you know? Like, some people take the pill and hope that it will fix their acne, but once they go off the pill, it's like there again. Or, you know, they have to make this huge switch and completely cut out gluten or become like vegan. And I think like that is obviously everyone's lifestyle choice. Some people do need to actually like nix that from their life because they are super sensitive to it. But I think there is kind of like this process of understanding our body and what it can take and what balance really means to you. So I don't know if this was like helpful, but if you're going through a period of confusion and trying to understand your body a little bit more, I suggest that you also try this 7-day window at first. Look at everything that you're eating, and if there's something that you can adjust within it, so say you like sandwiches or bread, maybe change the bread to something that's less refined, whole grain. In America, you really can't escape like sugars being added into breads and stuff, but yeah, you don't have to go completely the other end and go gluten-free unless you want to. Incorporate the vegetables. I think it was the veggies that really helped to also balance things out, stop with my cramping, give it the fiber that it needs for my organs and my skin to really work again, and actually regulate and rebalance my hormones. And yeah, it was just like all those little things together. And if you try that for 7 days, you might even realize, oh, I'm not even missing out on anything. And then your 7 days will become like 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks will become a month of these little minor adjustments, which can make the most impact. So that's what I would say. Take it in like little bite-sized steps. It's also like with life. It's these little steps accumulated every day that actually make the biggest difference. And I think I always just looked for a solution to be this one big answering thing. I would think, oh, people even say like take supplements, and supplements are supposed to heal it. Supplements are gonna work if everything else is, you know, all out of whack with your normal state of being. So in order for all these things to work, you need to kind of like find out what your definition of balance is for your body and really listen to it. But also your body has all the power to correct itself. I think that's one of the biggest things that I realized. Our bodies are made and wired to work really effectively for us, and it's so much smarter than we give it credit for, and that we even know it has the ability to be, and we're just kind of suppressing it. So some of the things that I want to cover in upcoming topics, if you guys are interested, I want to talk about the infradian rhythm and the circadian rhythm, because they're actually two separate things. One has to do with your menstrual cycle and eating for your menstrual cycle, which is from Alisa, and also the circadian rhythm, which has more to do with your lifestyle, day-to-day, you know, sleeping patterns, stress regulation. Yeah, anyway, this is just like story time. I think I just wanted to encourage you guys who are also in the midst of maybe figuring it out that you're not alone, and it does take a process, because it took me more than 10 years to finally figure it out, from 14 to like 25, 26, you know? So that whole time it was me trying to understand what was going on, and even within that it was broken into different phases where before it got better it got way worse, and then, you know, we're here now. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, leave them below and I'll try share as much as I can. And for the next installation of this, I want to show you what a real what I eat in a week looks like throughout the weeks of my cycle. I think that would be really interesting. So anyway, if you guys have any ideas on what you want to see, leave it below. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed or found it helpful, and subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope to speak to you guys again soon. Bye. It's like dark now.